So the gentlemen are in place. We're going to move our project and our discussion to Lincoln City, and we have Mayor Don Williams in our studios. He's been here before. I don't think I've ever called this mayor once that hasn't said, yes, I'll be there. Never has he said no, unless if he was leaving out of town, I think, one time, and said, Cheryl, I cannot be here. But he is very good about coming. He is very comfortable about asking any question. There has been nothing left off the table or anything at all, as well as Jim Hoover, who is a Lincoln County resident. Let's start. We know you pretty well a little bit, so we're going to put you just to the side for a minute, Mayor Williams, and let's talk about Jim Hoover. Jim, tell us about yourself and your background.
Good morning, Cheryl. I've been on the coast here for 25 years.
Wow.
I have a construction business with a number of employees. I build custom homes, do remodels up in the north part of Lincoln County and South Tillamook County, and just always wanting to be involved in politics, and not necessarily politics, but just local government, really with the things that affect people.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the committees and things that you've done within Lincoln City?
Actually, that's a really good question. It's a really hard thing. I've actually been in a position where I wanted to be on the Planning Commission for about 7 years because I live in the urban growth boundary, which means I get to deal with Lincoln City, but I don't get to actually run for an office in Lincoln City. It's interesting. I'm a property owner in Lincoln City also, so I pay taxes there. But they have an aversion to hearing people that just pay taxes that don't vote. So that's always limited my ability to be involved, like I say, with the exception of the Planning Commission. And so far they haven't seen fit to put me on there, which is an appointed position by the City Council.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll jump in because Jim has forgotten his work with the Americans with Disability Act.
Wow.
He has really propelled Lincoln City forward to take care of a lot of issues.
That is true, Cheryl. That was one of my passions, and it still is.
And tell us what that organization is.
Well, actually, it's not an organization. It's just simply a passion of mine. I had noticed for years and years that the city of Lincoln City were building projects that weren't ADA accessible. And looking back, I found out that there was a federal statute from the 70s and 80s that required cities to make things accessible and to identify them. So through about 3 or 4 years of tightening down the screws, they finally did a study, but they've to date still refused to say how far behind they are or come up with what the cost estimate is, even though they have that information. They're saying it's privileged information. And so the best I can tell, they're about $12 to $13 million behind in projects. And they've got, I believe, about 1,000-page document that identifies all the deficiencies in the city of Lincoln City. But they don't want to make that public either.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want our audience to know that oftentimes during the week I have at least several calls about what is going on in Lincoln City. And the hot topic right now is the warming centers, it seems like. Is that the hottest topic, really?
That's probably the hot one for this week.
Uh-huh. So, Jim, in your mind, as you look at Lincoln City, excuse me, I've been to the emergency room, and I've had quite a health challenge the last 3 or 4 weeks, so it is not easy, but I am doing my best to have some inhalers and things that I'm using, and so I apologize for the coughs that I do have, but I am trying. You'd never know by looking at me she's sick.
Oh, and you sound great.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Jim, one of the things, and Mayor Don, that we look at is that there have been so many things coming up, so many changes, so many people. We go back to the superintendent of schools. We go back to issues that are facing the politics. And, of course, Rep. Gomberg had some issues. We're looking at the Newport Bayfront, and Kevin Greenwood had some issues. He is now gone. The city of Toledo has some issues with their city manager and what is going on there and who it is letting go and what investigations are going on. So you are not alone, Mayor. You are not alone.
That's true. Yeah, that's a funny little world.
Well, in addition to those, Cheryl, you have to imagine the ones that you don't hear about. There's some recent reporting, and it's been kept pretty quiet because it's been handled in executive sessions up in the city of Lincoln City, where the city tends to handle their problems by asking people to sign non-disclosure agreements before they give them severance packages. And there's been for about 6 months now, as much as we can hear by the beating of the drums, accusations against the city attorney, who makes about $200,000 a year working for the city of Lincoln City, that they've been handling some type of complaint against the city attorney, And I almost hesitate to bring it up because Don's not in a position where he can speak about it, I'm sure, since he's on the council and it's been handled in executive sessions. But it is out there in the on the web if people want to start seeing. And it just makes me wonder, the things that we see, what are the things we don't see? I know a number of people who are no longer working for the city that were asked to sign or were required to sign a non-disclosure agreement as a condition of receiving a severance package from the city of Lincoln City. And that's really troubling when you're looking for transparency in government, you're really looking for openness in government and accountability in government. To have that type of stuff go on, and we see it in Hollywood, we see it in big corporations. It also exists within government, unfortunately, also, I believe.
So you're actually telling me this morning that the individuals that are employed by the city of Lincoln City before they retire, that they are signing, and before they receive their severance, or if they're being terminated or let go or leaving for some reason, that they have to kind of sign a confidentiality statement. They can say nothing.
That's my belief.
Wow. And it's true.
I know of one person who's personally told me that they couldn't comment when I asked them questions because they had been required to sign a non-disclosure agreement upon receiving a severance package from the city of Lincoln City.
How do you feel about that? And you personally, just let's step off to the side. And personally, how do you feel about that?
I believe there's a point at which keeping people's privacy is important, and I understand the difficulty in finding that line between respecting privacy or as an employer protecting your employees. But there's also the other side of it, which is these are our tax dollars. These are the people that have a lot of power that make decisions in the city of Lincoln City. And for a number of years, I've wondered if it was a matter of the people in the city of Lincoln City, and probably in a lot of government, a lot of those people know where, it's a bad terminology, where the bodies are buried. If there wasn't something that they didn't want people to know, they wouldn't be asking them to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So it's a difficult thing to find that balance. I'm not doubting that there's a place and a point for it, but it, as I've been told, it's used more than it should be.
Could I ask you, you have a city attorney making, you said $200,000.
I think the last number I saw was $197,000. That may be open to a little interpretation, but it's close.
It is more than our Congress make. It is more than Senator Merkley, Senator Wyden makes. It is more than Congressman Kurt Schrader makes. How can that happen, and is he worth it? And how can Lincoln City afford $200,000? And I know you weren't going to expect me to ask that, but I'm stunned.
It's a valid question, Cheryl.
Wow. And is anybody doing anything about it to consider that we have the right person and the right funds being used?
There's, and Don can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's 3 people that are directly hired by the city council. One is the city attorney, one is the city manager, and the other is the judge. The city judge. And so the pay of the city attorney is a direct result of the city council and their actions and their decisions because they control that position. Did he come out of Medford or Redmond or Medford or down in southern Oregon somewhere, and was he terminated? I'm not in a position where I have enough knowledge to say that, but I've heard that. All right. Any comments about it, Mayor? Can you say anything about it? I'm stunned.
Well, sure. The salary is discussed openly at, that was an original contract discussion for the hiring process in the first place. But it comes up every budget season. And we talk about not necessarily that individual item, but the legal department expense. He is basically the manager of the legal department for the city. So that comes up, and I've raised it each time saying, okay, this is more than I may be wrong on my names, but it was, you look at the combined salaries of Astoria, Tillamook, pretty much you take 3 or 4 cities up and down the North Coast, and it's more than all 4 combined. And I've mentioned that at budget before. And I don't want to make it personal, and I try never to. And I've raised issues in the past about our culinary center and how much the executive chef was getting. And I kept saying, look, this is not about this person. This is about the position. Is this position worth $60,000 a year? I don't think so. And that kind of blows up, well, why do you hate her? And I don't. I'm looking at dollars. And it's the same thing with the legal expense. In my mind, and I've raised this before, I think we could have a firm rather than an individual for that amount, and then you get more expertise. And but again, that'll come up again in budget, and I'll say the same thing I said before. I think we're paying more than we need to. And again, it's not a reflection on the city attorney. It's about the position.
It is unbelievable. I mean, legal counsel Wayne Belmont doesn't even make that at the county level. And as I say, our senators and our Congress, our federal legislators are not making that either. And I'm just saying as far as salary goes. They have other benefits and things like that, but I'm being very specific as a salary. And so we are learning this morning that your city attorney for the city of Lincoln City, his salary is $198,000 to $200,000 annually.
And it's accessible on the Internet. You can look it up in the budget.
Nothing new, in other words.
And I don't think that number's quite right. That could be with the benefits. I think we're closer in the 160 range.
Oh, okay. So we're putting benefits with it.
You just have to check.
All right.
Yeah. Jim's better at numbers than I am.
Jim Hoover, you came to us this morning. What do you want to talk about?
Well, there's 2 or 3 topics that I think you said were the hot topics in the city of Lincoln City. There's the whole issue of a warming shelter, and it's amazing to me that 1 month we can be in the city of Lincoln City talking about the need, and the next month the city of Lincoln City, in some capacity, I'm not going to say it's a specific person, maybe it is fighting to get something that everybody in the community believes is important. It's hard not to believe that that's tied to personalities or tied to individual issues. On the other side of that, you have a building like the Elks Lodge. And once again, this isn't about people. This is about a process where the city of Lincoln City took an old Elks Lodge that somebody bought, just happens to be a department head in the city of Lincoln City, rezoned it from multifamily to commercial, transferred a piece of land to the person by way of a land exchange in order to make the building financeable because the building encroached on the city's land. And in one case you have the city, what appears to be really willing to work with somebody. On the other hand, you have the city fighting against something that seems to be a community interest and a community need and a community topic, the need for a warming shelter. And I think Don can probably talk a little more about the warming shelter since he's involved in that. But that's an issue that it's really hard to understand how you make those 2 things work out from an outsider looking in standpoint, right. And it's concerning.
So, Mayor Don, bring us up to date. We've had you about maybe 3 weeks ago, I think, on the air, or 4, not very long ago, but where are we today?
Well, the warming shelter is a very long story with a couple of different pieces that have popped up in the news lately. And the first that popped up was, well, I don't quite know where to start with this. The first bit of news that popped up in the local paper was the fact that the homeless shelter was operating out of my building, and that I leased the building to a group that received money from the city in form of a grant. Every year we give out... I can't remember the name. What do we call those, Jim? Anyway, we give out grants each year. Mm-hmm. And it's just different nonprofits in town and some in the county. And so we distributed $45,000 to the warming shelter group, another $45,000 to Martha Watt's group, Shiloh the Gathering. So that just went by, and then I want to say 6 months later, 5-6 months later, the warming shelter contacted me and said, look, we've tried 3-4 other places. We can't get in. Can we use your building? And I said, yeah, but I'm using it now, so if you want to rent it, you can rent it from me. And this is at a seriously below market rate.
I want to talk about the rent because I happen to know it's $1,750, which is hardly anything.
Well, yeah, for 2,000 square feet with a commercial walk-in, freezer, commercial kitchen, washer, dryer, ADA, bathroom, shower, it's pretty dirt cheap. And
extremely generous compared to the legal counsel for your attorney.
I think we've talked about this before here, Cheryl. My wife and I are Christians, and we believe we have a mission on this earth. And one is to do whatever we can to help whenever we can with whatever we've been blessed with. And this is one of those things. Now, the building in question, it's a 6,000 square foot building, used to be the community college, used to be the fire station for Taft. We gave 4,000 square feet to Family Promise, and that's how this whole thing started. We had Hannah Kinnett. I think we heard her on your show, and we said, Debbie contacted her, my wife Debbie contacted her and said, we're thinking about buying this building. Would you want it if we could do it? And they said, yes. I said, okay, $1 a month.
Wow.
Well, after about 6 months of wrangling with their committee, and we had some political friction, they pulled out. And so, okay. So we took 2,000 square feet that we could afford to develop and turned it into a really nice dining room, banquet room, and the like. And I've just been doing fiddly little things with it. Nothing.
You have showers and...
Yeah. So, well, the whole thing was constructed under the premise of we were going to help people get back on their feet. So, lead that forward. Then in the newspaper, without even really talking to me about it, it just decided, well, here's another chance to slap Mayor Don. And so 3 different issues coming out saying, I mean, calls for my resignation, and I'm a crook, and I'm benefiting from city money, and all kinds of speculation, how much we're making, and okay, whatever. I honestly didn't take it very seriously. I thought it was just silliness. So a little blow up at council about it, and that's kind of been the end of it. But I'm sure that someone will fan that flame again. Anyway, so jumping forward, we said yes to the warming shelter group. They changed the direction a little bit. It was going to be just an evening emergency. They wanted to open up a day use center where they could bring people in, get them ID, get them birth certificates, get them a warm meal and some clothing, and get them just safe for the day and ready for trying to get back into society as best they could. Where am I going with that? Stink's getting older.
Today is the warming shelter opened at your facility?
The warming shelter is available to be open for about another week. So, okay, thanks. Back on track. So we got that going. Then we got notice that the city planning director was going to look into whether this was an allowable use.
Is that Townsend? Yes,
but again, I don't want to. It's not about him. It's about his position, and the position says I'm in charge of looking at these things. So that's fine. The determination was, because it's in the Taft Village core zoning, is that the accessory use of a warming shelter is not compliant with the zoning, simply because it doesn't even say it exists. This is getting into
which, by the way, Cheryl, they don't list all the accessory uses, because an accessory use is an accessory use,
right? Versus
a conditional use or an unconditional use, which would be something that's granted or that you have to apply for, whereas an accessory use is just something that's being used as an accessory to the main use of the building.
So make it even more simpler. That was a lot of accessory.
There's a lot of discretion when you pull out the word "it's not an accessory use." It's a lot of interpretation that's done by people who work at the city.
Mm-hmm. Are they right or are they wrong, or is this an issue that should be settled?
I think the better question is, are they consistent?
Are they consistent? All right.
And that's usually determined by the person who's being told yes or no.
What does that mean?
As a contractor, I interface with contractors, and that discretion of the city to determine what is allowed or what is not allowed, or what is required or what is not required, or to give an answer that a person can use to develop a piece of property with surety, or an answer that leaves the ambiguity that discourages a person from developing a piece of property, has been a difficult thing in the past for people on the business side or the developing side or property ownership side to determine.
One of the things that we know on the Oregon coast and in the state of Oregon, the weather has been really very nice. And we have enjoyed 30, 40, 50-degree weather all since, the winter started. And we're extremely fortunate that we are not sub-zero temperatures. Mayor Don, back to you.
Sure.
You say you've got one more week. What does that mean?
The appeal hearing is coming up. The warming shelter group, and I just need to emphasize this one more time to everybody. I am not involved in any way with the warming shelter. I'm not part of their board of directors.
And who is head of that group?
I believe Patrick Alexander is their
And he's a publisher
chairman.
for one of the newspapers.
Right, the Oregon Coast Today. And just a fine man, and great people for this group. And so that was kind of hurting me with the criticism of me and what was happening. It says, and I think I said this in the paper, that you can come after me all day long. Fine, I'm a public person, whatever. I didn't do anything wrong, I'm okay. But when you start attacking the ethics of these people who are putting everything on the line to help the less fortunate, I'm livid about that. And I have to bite my tongue sometimes, and I want to say more and more forcefully about how I feel about this, but I'm going to leave it to them.
So what's going to happen then next week?
Well, the planning director has, get my words right because I don't want to get this wrong, has basically said, you're not allowed to do this in this area. But I do believe they're going to find a middle ground on this. So it's not completely dead. It's just finding that compromise that, because it's not zoned for it, and I get it. We have zoning to protect areas. We don't want to throw a fish processing plant in the middle of a neighborhood, and that's reasonable. Now, do the people who have lived around that shelter have a reasonable right to not have that there? It's one of those not in my backyard kind of things. It's like we have complaints about the homeless. Well, that's a big, broad term. And what is it you don't like about people who don't have a home? And how do you even know they don't have a home in the first place? Just they look weird, they sound weird, they smell weird. Well, I can say that about a lot of people I know who have homes. And I just don't think it's right to just... There's not a word for it. It's not racist. It's classist or something like that says, just because you worry me, I don't want you near me. And but I understand, because I've been there every day. I keep my office at the shelter. I've reserved spots. Like, look, you can have this room, but I need this room too. I see some people coming in with some serious issues. It usually seems to be around mental health. I don't see a lot of intoxicated people or high people, but I'm not an expert. But I do see some people coming by that really have some problems. And, God willing, we'll have a facility where we can say, you're not in control of yourself anymore. We're going to put you here until we can evaluate and get you back on your feet. But again, I can say that about a lot of people who I know in the community. So anyway, where we're at is the time is coming up where they're going to say, you can't do this anymore as you've structured it. Here's how we can accept it for now. And my position is, that's fine. If we can continue to help these people and we have to tighten it a little bit, fine, I'm okay with that. For me, I take a more simplistic approach that would say, look, why don't we just declare an emergency? This is going to be over by March at the latest. We won't have a weather issue. And then we say, basically, don't come back. This is not zoned for this area until City Council says, or Planning and City says, we're going to change this zoning and this is now allowed. We shouldn't do it. And I totally get it. But they were there before doing it 2 years ago. And then there's the discussion of, well, we've used the Congregational Church, we've used other churches for this matter. Why is it okay there? The discussion is, the rationale is, accessory use is allowed or even mentioned in zoning in those areas. Mm-hmm. It is not mentioned whatsoever within the zoning of the Taft Village core. Open to interpretation. Does that mean we didn't ever want it or we just didn't think about it? For me, I think it was probably just overlooked. And so I don't know if it's a great excuse to not do it. It's a tightrope. I wouldn't want to be the planning director at this point and say, yeah, I've got this thing, you can't be safe tonight. I mean, he's a good guy, and I don't think there's any malice here. There's bureaucracy, which I just drives me insane, that I don't want someone's life determined by policy. When it's... My wife picked up a fella here in Newport last week. We were coming back from Albany, picking up our foster son, and he was leaning against a lamppost. Deb saw him when they were leaving town to go to Albany. Saw him coming back. It's about 9:30 at night, and he's just shivering cold, leaning up against the lamppost. Well, let's go get him, bring him down, put him in the shelter. And that's the kind of stories that you go, these are real people.
And you did that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Deb brought him back. I was kind of mad at her, but she had my son, who's a big boy, so they were cool. And got him in there, and he was warm for the night. And we've stopped just actually behind our building. We saw a fellow sitting on a log and just shivering. It was a miserable day a couple of years back. It was just after the shelter had closed at our place. And went up and talked to him. I said, hey, man, what can we do for you? Can we help you? And he says, do you have any razors? And I said, yeah, because Debbie and I carry what we call them blessing bags in our car with razors, soap, toiletries, a little bit of food, socks, which they need socks. And I said, yeah, I got some razors. And he goes, good, I want to kill myself. Well, I don't have any razors tonight. That was last night. But we ended up just taking him down to our building. We found a cot in the back room and said, here, stay here tonight. Oh. And, the poor guy had soiled himself. He was incoherent pretty much. And just because he's in that state doesn't mean it's okay to let him die. Mm-hmm. He's Absolutely. A mess. He's an absolute mess. But the man was...
Where is he today?
I don't know.
That man?
It was really odd. He left us a note. I mean, I was back down there first thing in the morning, and I have a camera system, and so I was watching him through the night, and he just stayed put, and everything was fine. Left us this beautiful note, and left, and I've never seen him again. Never again. And there's the other side where, maybe you do that, and the guy torches the place, and maybe he's a creepy pedophile. I don't know. But at that moment, I don't care. Mm-hmm. The man looks like he's dying, right. And I'm going to do my best. And if does something wrong, his bad, not mine. I did what I was called to do,
right.
And that was, if I've got something, give it.
Jim, what do you want to add to what Mayor Williams is saying this morning for Lincoln City?
Cheryl, I like being around people who inspire me. Not challenge me by saying you're not doing something, but inspire me. And Don is one of those people, whether it's his attitude and the grace that he shows when he's being put through a ethics complaint, or whether it's simply what he just shared with you. I like people that inspire me, and I can't help but be inspired by Don every time I talk to him. And I'd like to say publicly, thank you, Don, for your willingness to continue to speak, even if it's the minority voice, his willingness to not compromise and just go along because it's not going to matter. The vote's already been determined by the other people who have spoken on the council, or like he just shared, his compassion that he shows, and that's inspirational. That I hope takes the people listening today and says, I have the opportunity. I can do this every now and then, or they hear a little voice in their head that says, why don't you stop, or why don't you ask a question? And I think the world's a better place for people like Don. I know that, like I say, he helps me look at my life and ask myself questions. How can I live in a way that treats others with compassion and with care?
Mm-hmm. Don, do people stop you and say thank you, or do they say get out?
Absolutely. It is so funny. No, I haven't had anyone except in open session they get out. They haven't even said that. That's a joke. But I was just walking into the grocery store the other day, and this lady calls from across the parking lot. And, Don, come here, I want to talk to you. And she throws this big hug on me and just, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Thank you for sticking in there and hanging in there. And I go, okay, whatever. I'm very uncomfortable with that, and I'm very uncomfortable with what Jim said, and he's going to have to knock it off. Cause
you're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. I am extremely uncomfortable with that kind of stuff. But that's the reason I keep going is I keep getting reminded, and I keep believing, God has sent these people to say, okay, I know it stinks, but hang in there a little longer. And to have people say, you're making a difference in somebody's life, that's a good for me.
You're into a 4-year term. You're into your second year now.
Oh, I thought it was 5 to 10. Maybe good behavior, I'll get off. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so you're in your...
This is entering my 4th year, and so by pretty much this time exactly next year, we should have a new mayor.
So you've got 1 more year to go.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, we're in the 2018 election.
You are, okay. Can you tell our audience, can you take a step back and just share the things you've been through, the kinds of things that have been negatively, that you've managed to come out on top and say, hey, there's nothing there. All the things that were said, it's not true, and that that they have been looked at.
Oh boy!
And I hate to ask you that, but I just think people need to really realize, because some people don't know. It's a high interest category to you. People.
While he's deciding whether that's really a path he wants to go down, Cheryl, I'll interject something here. It's amazing to me how much unrest has been created by simply having a voice on the city council that expresses an opinion that may be different from the other councilors. I've been involved in participating in the city long enough that I know that the city council in past years has tried to say that they will act as a unified voice. And I don't know how that was meant, but what it came out as is that nobody ever spoke against the majority and said, I'm concerned about, some item or another item. I always thought that diversity, or the ability to hear a number of different opinions, sometimes on both sides of an issue, was a benefit to the people of the city of Lincoln City. And one of the things the city does really well is they televise their city council meetings so that they're available to the public. But it's been amazing to me how much people have responded to simply having Don speak to an issue that he believes needs a voice, and the reaction of people when he speaks that, and that's really concerning. It also goes to when you elect an official as a citizen, are we electing them to represent us, or are we electing them to simply do what they think is right?
Well, I'll tell you the transition that's really funny. Now that you said look back, is when I first was elected mayor and I started getting into a little trouble, people would come up and go, "Don, really behind you, 100%." And I'd say, "Why are you whispering?" And now I get people yelling across the parking lot, which is better. Yeah. Okay, so the history. Basically, early on in my tenure, I was brought up on ethics charges. City Council unanimous decision to send me before the Ethics Commission for, I don't remember how many pages was that. It was some 400-page document and this, that, and the other thing. And I kept saying, for what? There's nothing here. But they proceeded. Okay, that's fine. Went before the Ethics Commission. I was in there 15 minutes. 5-zip. They said, no, there's nothing here. You couldn't have done these things. It's not possible. So with that, we did actually learn some things, and I learned some things, and I'm okay. No harm, no foul. I thought it was pretty cruel at the one point, and it was really distressing to me because I've never been through anything like that. I didn't know what the consequences were. I had no legal representation. I couldn't even talk to our city attorney about it because he was signing off on it. And so it was distressing. I was able to, our CIS, our local our insurance company, paid $2,500 to city officials to defend them, but that was it. And $2,500 with an attorney was about an hour and a half.
And that was given to you? Yeah,
that was part of an insurance payment. But then I barely talked to my other attorney or my attorney I ran up another $2,000. So
personally, out of your own funds?
Oh yeah, out of my own funds. So after that, to the council's credit, and I will say to Dick Anderson for stepping up and saying, look, we lost. We should step up, and so they did pay that. It was significantly more than $2,000, but I said, just give me $2,000, I can live. So credit to them for that. Then, before that was even settled, the council voted to hire an outside investigator. So they hired an attorney who was not serving as an attorney, but as a private investigator out of Eugene. Pope, I forget his first name, to do an investigation of me. Now that I thought was even worse, because this man was provided with names and phone numbers of citizens who have spoken up against the council or in my favor, and we're basically being interviewed to not only find out what I've done, but perhaps what they've done. And I thought that was pretty weak. And the entire time I kept saying, look, there's nothing here, guys, there's nothing here, nothing here. And the report was released. I believe we were into it for a minimum of $75,000 on this report. Then there was the big kerfuffle of making it public. And it went on and on and on. And one night, I'm looking over in council, and I see my wife crying. And we met over at the coffee station during council. I said, do you just want me to put an end to this? And she says, yeah. I said, okay. So we went and we had a little discussion. I said, look, write it up. What do you want? And they said, well, we want an apology. And I said, look, I didn't do anything, so I'm not going to apologize. But we worked something out. So we had the attorney write up a little note, and so that was the famous, I apologize for perhaps breaking council rules. Done. Well, then we had a Department of Justice investigation that was secret. Didn't know about that one.
You didn't?
No, I had no idea until Ross Smith contacted me. Now, Ross Smith is a local man who is an open government's advocate, and he has lawsuits before the council right now, suing the council, and I'm a defendant in that. Anyway, we were under investigation by the Department of Justice. And so I get a call from a DOJ investigator, and they asked me some questions. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. I have no concept of what this is about. They wrote their opinion maybe a month later, and said basically, there's nothing here. We don't know what you're looking for. Leave us alone. And that was the end of that. Was that it was it? I'm looking at Jim. I have a feeling there was something else, but then the recall effort. That was a locally sponsored one, based off the Pope report saying that I'd done something that I didn't do. And anyway, so it's been a trip. It has been a long, strange trip, and each one of these times, I really feel I'm just being tempered for something else. And I don't know if it's politics or just life. But I have a much larger, longer view of things now as mayor. I don't quite get as excited and as troubled as I used to about the minutia of things. Do I wish it had never happened? Yeah. Am I glad it happened? On some fronts, I am. Like I said, it's easier to take the brunt of things now, especially for other people, and I'm thankful for that.
Jim Hoover, we don't get you in our studios very often, and you are a man that knows a lot that is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And what kinds of things do you want to talk about while we're still on the air with Mayor Don that we haven't talked about?
There's a fairly important decision that's being worked on right now. The city of Lincoln City purchased a plot of land, and by plot of land I mean at one point it was zoned for about 4,000 to 5,000 houses. So it's a significant parcel of land.
During the time of David Hawker.
During the time of David Hawker.
The city manager.
That piece of land is in the process of being, I believe, and Don can help me, a plan put together for developing it. And that plan could impact pretty much the development in the city of Lincoln City for years to come. If the city decides to make that commercial land, it would affect all the commercial land values. Mm-hmm. If the city decides to make that residential land, it would affect all the residential values. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the need for affordable housing. I'm not even sure how you address the affordable housing issue with all this land, but it's something that the citizens of Lincoln City need to listen to, read, get involved in as it moves forward, because it will dictate a lot of what happens property value-wise, development-wise in the city of Lincoln City for years to come. Mm-hmm. And unless, in my opinion, it's developed as a comprehensive plan in its entirety, they're never going to get value out of it. What I'm saying by that is if the city within the last year and a half talked about selling off 50 lots or 75 lots or 100 lots. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that any 4 people on the council can decide to sell something the city owns at any time. So the next 4 city councilors that get elected can decide to sell it off. So I don't see why a person would want to buy 200 parcels of land knowing that the next city council could sell off 200 parcels next door for half the value. And it's got real implications. It's one of those things that I think is one of the more critical things that we need to be looking at in the city of Lincoln City. The other one is, and after Don sharing all the things he's been through, it's really hard to say we're looking for somebody else to run for mayor that has the fortitude and the strength to stand. I live in the urban growth boundary. I don't live in the city. Somebody that'll stand on their principles, be willing to speak, even if it's counter to the other people on the council, not in a defiant way, but simply as I believe this is an important issue that needs to be talked about and bring up an issue. There's also some city council seats that are open. So I know there's people out there that are committed to participating in local government, and I would encourage those people to get actively involved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
Mayor Don Williams, what kind of comments do you have on what Jim Hoover's just spoken about?
Well, part of the Mutual Admiration Society we have here is, and I've said it before, is Jim is the reason I got involved in the first place. I was a part-time, well, I wasn't even a part-time resident. We had a rental home here, Deb and I did, and we started getting, the wind was blowing our way.
One of the largest, may I say, sleeps 40.
Well, not anymore, it doesn't. City Council took that away from us. That was one of those weird things where I missed one meeting, and then I got a call actually from Jim. And he says, "You know what they just did?" I said, "No, what?" He says, "You can't have it anymore. We've reduced it to 16." And I was like, "Okay, not a hearing, not nothing under the guise of health and safety." So
was that legal?
Yeah, they can do that. Again, is it right? Is it wrong? I'm kind of hamstrung on these things because as a member of the council, once the council's made a decision, I don't have the luxury of disputing it. I can only say, well, I don't think it was right, but it is what it is,
right.
And that's it. And we're taking steps to find a way past that. But anyway, so the winds were blowing about getting rid of vacation rentals and all that, and we thought, well, we need a voice here. We've got to be able to protect ourselves because we lived in Portland at the time. So we moved here. I built the Nelscott Cafe at the time and ran that. But then we started attending meetings, and the regular fixture was Jim Hoover, and I was so impressed with how number one, just how articulate and forceful he was, but the fact that he kept showing up and didn't live in the city, but was concerned enough for the city to show up. And really, for me, that means a lot.
Right.
I can listen to people complain all day, and I'll say, come before council, write a letter, come meet. Oh, no, I don't want that trouble. Well, okay, I'm sorry. You have to step up. So, I forgot where I was going again.
Well, we've been on the air for an hour and a half straight. wanted to take this program this morning because you were going to be out of town, and it's so important to be updated. And when I talked to Jim, he said he would be willing to come on. So we're going to wrap up an hour and a half of nonstop.
Good job. Thank you.
Without any interruptions. We've certainly got an idea of what is going on and being updated, and that's what I wanted to get is updated.
I just want to make sure. We've talked about some serious, heavy things here. I still love Lincoln City. It is a beautiful town with so many great things going for it, and I don't want everyone to focus on this little bit of
and people
small
to
town
participate
politics.
and care.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the shelter is overflowing with donations and people who are trying to help, and every charity we have, and you hear that over and over. This is the most generous city I think on the planet, and I'm proud to be mayor. I'm so glad that I've had this opportunity to be mayor.
Right.
So, is there trouble? Yeah, I guess. Well, I'll get over it.
Well, it's certainly been an extended morning this morning, and I appreciate the fact, Jim, that you took the lead to talk to me, to be willing to come in and to really bring us current on what is going on. I have an issue with $200,000 for a city attorney. I don't know how to handle that. I better stay out of it because I need to stay neutral. But I think that's quite interesting. And, of course, please realize that could be with all of the other benefits as well. It could not just be salary, and I want to clarify that, too. So maybe
we can get you that number.
That would be great.
Sure.
Really important. Jim Hoover, final comments this morning that you have, and then we'll go to our mayor.
I just thank you, Cheryl. Always appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk about what's going on in North County. Thank you, Don, for being willing to show up today.
What does your political career look like? You ran for county commissioner. Are you looking at other positions politically?
He should.
I probably should. I have a lot of work running my business and keeping people employed and keeping clients happy. So I am here. I'm still passionate about serving, and we'll see what happens in the future, what positions come up.
All right. Very good. Well, we encourage you. You're a good man.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Don, final comments for you, and what are you going to be doing in the next 2 weeks?
Next 2 weeks, really not a lot. I'm hoping to take a little bit of time off with my wife after a very hectic holiday season and just relax a little bit. We got to see the grandkids, which was great. It's just a renewing blessing for us. And we're just going to go through the work that's before us on the council. And we have some important stuff, some lighter stuff, but I'm excited. I think we're on the right track as the city goes.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate what you do. One thing I need some help from you. I am disconnected from your city manager, Ron Chandler, for the month of December. He was very busy. We did not have him on. He's always on the fourth Friday of every month. Stacy is gone now. There's a new administrative assistant.
Right.
I've spoken to her. I don't know her name.
I believe it's Courtney.
Okay. And I just need some help with getting reconnected to Ron Chandler. So would you see Mr. Chandler and say, call Cheryl and get back on her schedules, because it's just like he's gone. I don't know where he is, and we need to get him plugged back in.
I think December was very hectic for everybody
I
this
think
year.
so. It
Yeah.
really, really was. And so I just need some help. Usually I call Stacy, and she's gone now. So anyway, if you could put a little note and a little buzz in his ear
right, we'll
get connected with Boss FM Radio, I would appreciate that. It is the first full week of the new year, 2018. There is so much going on. And if people have comments and things, Don, how can they communicate if they're not part of the city council but they are part of Lincoln City?
Well, they can always go to the city website, it's lincolncity.org. You can get a hold of any department head. You can get a hold of the council, the mayor, anyone, just one link and it gets you there. We have a great service through that website where you can watch any video live or you can watch replays. It has a great service in it that you can go down the agenda items listed, click on that agenda item, it will take you to where it's being spoken about, and that's terrific. So anything you're interested in, it's there. There's a lot of opportunities to be involved on committees. We still have many open. We're filling them quickly, which is nice.
That's good.
Yeah, but don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There are a lot of people who are afraid of change. There are a lot of people who want to discourage conversation, but don't be afraid of that. Keep pushing forward, and you can run off those naysayers.
And when are city council meetings, and are they open to the public?
We are having a meeting tonight, second and fourth Monday of every month, and they are completely open to the public. We have 2 public input sessions, one at the beginning, one at the end, well, near the beginning, and one at the end of the night. You can have your say there. It's not really a time for discussion, so I always tell people, just come prepared to say what you want to say without even worrying about what we're going to say or do. Mm-hmm. And if you have a group, you have a business, you have anything you want, come talk about it.
Absolutely. So it is opened, and you are welcome.
Absolutely.
So this morning it has been very interesting with Jim Hoover in our studios, and of course a citizen of Lincoln City, as well as current Mayor Don Williams, bringing us up to date on the homeless shelter and all the other issues of real estate and properties and what is going on in Lincoln City. Boy, I'm really struggling. I want you to know that Samaritan Emergency Hospital, or the emergency room, has me on some pretty heavy medications. So I appreciate that, and I would be a lot worse if I didn't have those heavy medications that I am on. So they have taken extremely good care of me and said, Cheryl, we got to get you well, and they are working on it because I am on many medications, and so I thank them very much. Samaritan Pacific Communities Hospital.
And you just powered through an hour and a half of interviews.
That's right, and I've done nonstop of interviews. So anyway, to you two, thank you very much. This program is going to be downloaded in its entirety at bossradio.net, and you can pick it up there in the next 45 minutes to an hour, as well as, of course, this morning we also had a very interesting program. We found out that Lincoln County ranks 7th in the state for the number of students without homes, and that's 794 students during the 2016-17 school year. That is the current number, and that reaches birth to 12th grade. That they were identified as lacking stable housing in Lincoln County, and it included the number of students, which accounts for about 12% of the student population. These students were eligible for services under the McKinney-Vento Act that helps them stay in school and succeed. So 2 parts of a program. I choose the programs that we do. I know that the Senior Activity Center came in. We are going to talk about the Death Cafe, but I couldn't. She wanted to be on right now. I've been on the air for an hour and a half. We can't do any more. We got to get off the air. And so we will get you that information, though, from the Senior Center. I promise you that. It's been a great morning. I apologize for my coughs, but we did make it through, and we are privileged to have the kinds of programs that we have in our studios, and we thank you very much for making it a hot topic. You never know who I'm going to have on, so you don't want to miss. Who knew that we were going to have the city of Lincoln City on this morning with Jim Hoover and Don Williams? So I hope that Dick Anderson and all the crew in Lincoln City plugged in and found out what was going on this morning, because you never, ever know. Good morning, America. Good morning, Oregon. Good morning to the Central Oregon coast. I am your host, Cheryl Harle, and it is a great week on the beautiful Central Oregon coast. We always do more for you. Often it's said that we are imitated but never, ever duplicated. Have a great day. I'll see you on the radio.